Harcourt Fenton Mudd is one of Star Trek's most memorable characters. He is a, to quote Captain James T. Kirk, thief, swindler and conman, liar and rogue. A forerunner to other intergalactic chancers like Quark, Harcourt, Harry for short, first appeared in the very third episode of the original series, Mudd's Women. He's introduced as a human trafficker whom arrives with a group of beautiful women whom he refers to as cargo rather than crew. It might sound like a typically sexist plot for an old TV show, but the network themselves were concerned about the portrayal of a space pimp. However, Roger C. Carmel's performance is so overblown and extravagant that he can't help but be charming in a roguish way. And ultimately, he always gets punished for his schemes, even if he does connive a way out. The character appeared in future episodes of both the original series and the animated series. Decades later, the character returned for 2 episodes of Star Trek Discovery, attempting to steal the titular ship's revolutionary spore drive by triggering a catastrophic time loop. It was quite an elaborate scheme by the con man, who perhaps learned his lesson and settled for more low-key scamming by the time he met Kirk and the Enterprise crew. So with that in mind then, I'm Ellie with Trek Culture, here with 10 things you didn't know about Harry Mudd. Number 10. Roger C. Carmel also played a niche Batman villain. Harry Mudd isn't actually the campist antagonist played by actor Roger C. Carmel in a much-loved 1960s TV show. That honor goes to Colonel Gum, the foreman of the Pink Chip Stamp Factory. Like many of the 60s Batman villains to face Adam West, he had a very niche criminal interest: stamps. His main crime was the counterfeiting of stamps, and he also had various stamp-themed implements of torture like the enlarged perforating and coiling machine, presumably designed to turn Batman and Robin into stamps. Colonel Gum appeared in Batman a year after Carmel's first appearance as Harry Mudd in Star Trek. It's likely that it was Carmel's performance as Mudd that caught the attention of Batman casting agents. Both Mudd and Gum were inherently dishonest men with a keen interest in financial gain, be it stamps or latinum. Unlike Mudd, however, Gum didn't stick around for long. The character only made 1 appearance in the Adam West and Burt Ward series and has never appeared again. However, with Nicolas Cage stating an interest in playing a similar niche villain, Egghead, in a future Batman movie, perhaps Rainn Wilson or Greg Grunberg could revive the role of Colonel Gum opposite Robert Pattinson's Batman. Number 9. He got Spock and Chapel together. One of the continuing subplots of Star Trek Strange New Worlds is the unrequited love that Nurse Christine Chapel has for Mr. Spock. The prequel series appears to suggest that this affection isn't as one-sided as it first appeared in Star Trek the original series. Nurse Chapel's love for Spock was something of a recurring joke in the original series, with it being common knowledge to everyone aboard the Enterprise. So much so that good, kind, romantic Harry Mudd offers to help Chapel nudge their relationship along in an episode of Star Trek the animated series. He gives her a love potion which he says will help Spock get in touch with his warmer, romantic side. It works, but with predictably disastrous results. Mudd captures Chapel with a besotted Spock in hot pursuit. For the briefest time, Chapel gets what she's always desired: Spock to look at her in a romantic way, before the potion wears off and she is instead repulsed by the Vulcan. As Spock observes, a few moments of love paid for with several hours of hatred. Your potion is scarcely a bargain, Harry. Number 8. He created an android army to avoid capture. Rainn Wilson played a younger version of Harry Mudd in 2 episodes of Star Trek Discovery Season 1 and reprised the role one last time for a short trek. Entitled The Escape Artist, it follows Harry Mudd as his schemes have finally caught up with him. Captured by a bounty hunter and awaiting transfer to the relevant authorities, Mudd recounts the other times that he has escaped from bounty hunters. It soon becomes apparent that the Harry Mudd in chains isn't actually the real one, but is instead an android replica. When the bounty hunter hands Mudd to the authorities, they're already fully aware of his scheme. It transpires that the real Mudd is masquerading as a female bounty hunter who sells Harry replicas to gullible mercenaries. It's another of Mudd's ingenious money-making schemes designed to make a profit on his own bounty. Presumably, the 50,000 credits he charges each bounty hunter is enough to cover the overheads of what appears to be quite an elaborate process of android duplication. But perhaps for Harry, it's a small price to pay to avoid being thrown into a Federation penal colony. Number 7. His exploits were required reading at Starfleet Academy. Harry Mudd's exploits across the universe became so legendary that they eventually ended up on the syllabus at Starfleet Academy. It makes makes sense, especially given that both Voyager and Lower Decks suggest that officers are taught about the untrustworthy nature of the Ferengi, for example. In the 1997 computer game Star Trek Starfleet Academy, it's revealed that Mudd's exploits have inspired an educational simulation. The game featured William Shatner, Walter Koenig, and George Takei in character as Kirk, Chekhov, and Sulu, who would advise players in specially shot cut scenes. One of these simulations involved having to rescue the Stella, Mudd's freighter, while simultaneously negotiating with the Romulan warbird. It's one of several missions that reference Star Trek lore within the period running up to the events of Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country. It's also not the first Star Trek game to feature the character of Mudd either. In the Star Trek 25th Anniversary game, released in 1992, players come into contact with Harry Mudd, who's got himself into another fine mess with some space pirates, and this was a nod to an unmade Harry Mudd episode from the original series era. Number 6. Greg Grunberg wanted to play Mudd in an Abrams Trek movie. Greg Grunberg and J.J. Abrams have been working together for decades now in roles both small and substantial. From CIA agent Eric Weiss in Alias to Matt Parkman in Heroes via the ill-fated pilot of Oceanic Flight 815 in Lost. When it was announced that J.J. Abrams was to reboot the original Enterprise crew for a new series of movies, it was expected that Greg Grunberg would join the cast in some form. Grunberg has said that he's in regular touch with his friend Abrams to offer his services in roles big or small. Star Trek was no exception, and he eventually played the role of James Kirk's stepdad in 2009's Star Trek, but purely as a voiceover. However, Trek Movie and others suggested Grunberg as a potential Harry Mudd for the Kelvin timeline. Grunberg himself commented on the prospect of playing the character, stating that he would absolutely love to play Harry Mudd. That would be incredible. I would have to redefine the character and do it the way I see doing it, but that character to me has comedy and brings levity, and I would be able to work with robotic chicks. How fun would that be? Unfortunately, the prospect of a fourth Kelvin timeline movie has become more and more remote, so this may well end up being one of those Star Trek missed opportunities. Number 5. He almost appeared in Deep Space Nine. When they were developing the episode One Little Ship, Deep Space Nine's executive producer Ira Stephen Burr pondered that it would have been better with a Harry Mudd-style character. He felt that a comic character like Mudd would have tied the two elements of the episode together. In it, Dax, Bashir, and O'Brien are shrunk to microscopic size after encountering an anomaly. It's a comic idea, but slightly jars against the darker backdrop of the Dominion War and their mission to rescue the Defiant from Jem'Hadar hijackers while flying a tiny runabout around the place. While Burr spoke about including a Harry Mudd-style character in place of the Jem'Hadar, writer and script editor Hans Beimler actually came up with a way for Mudd to feature in One Little Ship. The end of his version would have seen Mudd shrink to microscopic size after his escape goes badly wrong, and he's exposed to the same anomaly as Dax, Bashir, and O'Brien. The only thing that's unclear is how Mudd would have fought off the ravages of almost a century between his original series and Deep Space Nine appearances. Anti-aging serum, perhaps? Android replica? Moisturizing mud pack? Number 4. He was an importer of Klingon coffee. It's a well-known fact that Deep Space Nine runs on Raktajino, which is Klingon coffee. There's a recipe for it in the Star Trek cookbook, and visitors to the Star Trek experience in Las Vegas could order one from the cafe. It's described as aged Java in the cookbook, which recommends mixing French and Italian coffee beans. However, it's less widely known that Harry Mudd was actually responsible for importing the Klingon beverage to, if not the entire galaxy, then at least Deep Space Nine. The art department responsible for designing the various props for Star Trek's iconic space station also designed a bottle for the Klingon coffee to be displayed behind the bar at Quark's. It has a couple of in-jokes and Easter eggs on it, one of which sheds light on one of Mudd's businesses. The bottle displays the legend, "Imported by Harcourt Mudd." Given that nobody knows what Raktajino is when the Deep Space Nine crew travel back to the 23rd century, it's clear that Harry Mudd isn't in the coffee business yet. It's therefore more likely that after the Klingon War ended, Mudd set up a new, possibly even legitimate business venture exporting Klingon coffee to the Federation. Number 3. There was almost a third Harry Mudd story. Harry Mudd's popularity almost led to a third appearance in an episode called Deep Mud. It would have seen Harry Mudd battle the Enterprise crew on a planet with a treacherous surface of molten mud, which is exactly the sort of knowing plotline you would expect from a third outing. Deep Mud was planned as a direct sequel to I Mud, which ended with Harry stranded on his planet of seductive androids. The con artist was held up as a human failure from which the androids could learn. He also, in an example of classic 1960s family-friendly sexism, is stranded with multiple android copies of his ex-wife. In his conniving to leave the planet, Mudd gets hold of an incredibly powerful cache of weapons that buys him passage on a ship full of space pirates. It all goes spectacularly wrong, of course. The third Mud story wasn't to be, however, as actor Roger C. Carmel was contracted to a feature film. Not only that, but Gene Roddenberry was firmly against space pirates in his utopian future. Number 2. Harry Mudd was almost in the Star Trek pilot. The Cage, Star Trek's unaired pilot, was famously rejected by the network, calling a halt to the adventures of Pike, Spock, and Number 1 until they returned to Star Trek in Discovery Season 2. The second pilot, Where No Man Has Gone Before, was more successful and began the adventures of the iconic Enterprise crew properly. However, the second pilot was almost very different. In response to NBC's concerns about the high-concept sci-fi and truly alien creatures from The Cage, writer Stephen Candle put forward a more human antagonist. Taking the archetype of a conman, Candle believed that such a character would be identifiable to an audience. Seeing the character as a sort of intergalactic Wizard of Oz, the conman behind the curtain, rather than his terrifying creation. Gene Roddenberry gave Candle a Star Trek story outline entitled The Women, about the treatment of sex workers in space. Believing that the antagonist wasn't engaging enough, Candle slotted his outer space conman into the story, so the women became Mudd's women. The network was very uncomfortable about this storyline as a launching pad for their new sci-fi show and went with Where No Man Has Gone Before instead. Number 1. He was the only recurring original series character outside of the regulars. While Khan Noonien Singh and Sarek would return in the Star Trek movies, Harcourt Fenton Mudd clocked up 2 more return appearances before the release of Star Trek the Motion Picture. This meant that Roger C. Carmel was the only guest actor in the original series to play a character more than once. He's not the only recurring guest actor, of course. Mark Leonard, who played the Romulan commander in Balance of Terror, would return to play Spock's father. Ricardo Montalban gave a fantastic performance as Khan, who has gone down as one of the greatest Star Trek villains, and Wrath of Khan is something the franchise still tries to replicate. Roger C. Carmel sadly died in 1986 at the age of 54, so never appeared in any of the subsequent Star Trek movies. It is tempting to ponder Star Trek V as a big-screen epic based on that unmade Deep Mud script, though it may have ended up too similar to the search for Spock's journey to the treacherous Genesis planet. Regardless, it's a testament to the performance that Carmel gives as Mudd that the character was brought back for 3 repeat appearances, including the abandoned Deep Mud. And that concludes our list. If you think we missed anything, then do let us know in the comments below. And while you're there, don't forget to hit that like button and also the notification bell. We are so close to 250,000 subscribers here on YouTube, and we want to hit that by the new year. All we want for Christmas is you, specifically 6,000 of you, so don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Also, head over to Twitter and follow us there, and Instagram as well, and I can be found across various social medias just by searching Ellie Littlechild. I've been Ellie with Trek Culture. I hope you have a wonderful day, and remember to boldly go where no one has gone before.